It's no secret that I absolutely love the Summoner class in Terraria. Ever since it was introduced, it's had some of the most fun and unique weapons in the game, and with the addition of whips in 1.4, the class truly became something special. It became so much more powerful and engaging. But how strong are these whips really? I wanted to challenge myself to be Terraria's master mode with only whips, and this is that journey. Now, as for the rules for this playthrough, there's going to be two major rules that we'll be following. Rule number 1, whips will be our only weapons. That one's pretty obvious. And rule number 2, I will not be stacking whip effects till hard mode to keep pre-hard mode a bit harder. I start our journey like many others. However, I immediately have a big issue in this case. You see, I have no weapons, and on top of that, no easy access to a weapon. You see, the first whip that I can get in the game is the leather whip, which is bought from the zoologist. However, the zoologist can only move into your world when you have 10% of the bestiary filled. Now, that might not sound that hard. However, I can't kill anything without a weapon. So what can I do? Well, there's actually a surprising amount of the bestiary you can fill out without killing anything. In fact, you can actually get past the 10% you need just by encountering non-hostile mobs such as bunnies, worms, birds, NPCs, etc. However, I never said killing was totally off the table. You see, there is something I can take advantage of. Say hello to the cactus armor. You see, the new special effect added to the cactus armor in 1.4 allows damage reflection, given that it is made out of cactuses. Meaning in some cases I can actually kill enemies just by them hitting me. Now this is not a strategy I can rely on, as most enemies will kill you before the armor can kill them. However, it will speed up the process a little bit by letting me kill weak enemies such as some slimes. I start off by exploring the world for accessories and other items that we'll need to gather the requirements for NPCs to start moving in. And after that I start building up some houses for them to move in as well. Later on, I end up using a gravitation potion that I had found while exploring underground to go look for some sky islands and see what goodies I can find. I end up finding fledgling wings, which are such an amazing item at this point in the game. It'll make exploring the rest of the world so much easier. I use my new wings to explore the rest of the world, and I ended up being able to make it to the dungeon. And at the dungeon, I'm able to grab a water candle, which will be very helpful as it can increase spawn rates so that I can find some of the more rare non-hostile mobs quicker. After that, I also head to the Crimson to break a Crimson Heart so that the arms dealer can move in. I also dig out an area around the underground housing that I created so I can increase the areas in which gem mobs can spawn. These are probably one of the most important mobs for this run. For every gem, there is both a squirrel and a bunny variant of the gem animals, meaning that there are a total of 14 entries for the bestiary that I can get with them, and they sell for some good money early game too. So gathering as many of these gem animals as possible is going to be very important. After gathering an absolute ton of these gem mobs, I realized I was starting to run out of some space, so I needed to head to the desert in order to build more homes for the NPCs so that they can move in. And finally, after only being 4 seconds off of 10 hours in the save file, I finally had the zoologist move in and I can obtain our first weapon, the leather whip. However, immediately after, I begin the quick work of replacing the leather whip, as it's not very good. After a ton of exploring in the underground jungle, I get the feral claws, and then I gather enough materials for the snapthorn. Now that I finally have the snapthorn, I immediately head to the Crimson in order to create an arena for the Brain of Cthulhu. You technically don't need to beat the boss right now, you just need to gather the materials that are dropped by the creepers to make the Deathbringer pickaxe in order to progress. However, I do want to beat him eventually, as I'll be needing some of the old one's army stuff for later. So after an embarrassing loss, I farm the materials to make a spawner and I take down the boss. After getting tissue samples from the brain of Cthulhu, as well as mining some obsidian with the Deathbringer pickaxe, we are finally able to craft the obsidian armor. Listen, this armor needs no introduction. They nerfed this armor and it's still one of the best armors in the game for summoners in general, and it's even better for us in this whip playthrough. After the slow grind for gear was over, I wanted to do some catching up, so I decided to fight Queen Slime and the Eye of Cthulhu at the same time, well, because I could. After a bit more farming of King Slime to get some money, a goblin army invaded, and after beating them, I immediately go to find the Goblin Tinker. Well, not exactly immediately. I had some trouble finding him, and it was taking a while, so I ended up using a shark statue that I had found earlier in order to farm for some fins to make hunter potions. Thankfully, with the hunter potions, I'm able to find the Goblin Tinkerer pretty quickly. My next goal is to gather the rest of the items I want before taking on the last two bosses in pre-hard mode. I spent a ton of time fishing for things like a frog leg and crates, which hold the tsunami in a bottle and the sailfish boots, all very important movement accessories that I love to get. Next up is a quick few tries at the queen bee in order to get the honeycomb for the stinger necklace. I then explored the underground snow biome in order to find the blizzard in a bottle. I always like going for the blizzard in a bottle because it's almost as good as the sandstorm in the bottle, and you can get it in basically every world, unlike the sandstorm in a bottle. After gathering all the items that I wanted, it was time to start preparing for the Skeletron fight. However, in the middle of building the arena, a blood moon finally happened, so I obviously had to deal with that first. Then, finally, on the next night, it was time to take on Skeletron. After taking down Skeletron, I get the Bone Glove, and just like in the Zenith Sword series, this item is going to help us a lot against the Wall of Flesh and other enemies with the projectiles that it creates. Next, I head into the dungeon to gather bones for our next whip, as well as a few other things like the Cobalt Shield and the Shadow Key. After getting all I needed from the dungeon, I head to the underground snow biome and I make a Flinx farm in order to get their fur to make the deer thing. The deer thing actually summons the deer clops from the Don't Starve crossover update. The Deerclops actually drops an item that will help us a lot against the Wall of Flesh, and that is the Bone Helm. When equipped, it creates these shadow hands much like in the Deerclops fight, giving us another way to hit enemies at range. These hands can also pierce, damaging multiple enemies, making it very effective for the Hungries in the Wall of Flesh fight. I then spend the next good while doing a lot of the final pre-hard mode prep I can, like farming for money for reforges, taking on the Olwen's army a few times, and making a good underground fishing spot for armored cavefish. After all of that prep was done, it was finally time to take on the Wall of Flesh. One thing of note I want to say is that in this fight I am using a horse mount, which you can get from the zoologist after completing 30% of the bestiary. In the 100 Days Summoner series, I was using the white one because it went with my outfit at the time. However, there seemed to be a few people who thought I was using the unicorn mount in pre-hard mode. Easy mistake to make, I know. I just wanted to clear that up because it's actually a mount that I use very commonly in pre-hard mode. So, without further ado, let's get into the fight. Now that I've finally beaten the wall of flesh, we can finally start our journey through hard mode. However, you're going to have to come back next time where we take on hard mode in the Whips Only Master Mode Challenge. One thing I wanted to say is if you made it to the end of the video, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Please go ahead and leave a like. And if you really enjoyed it and want to see more, please go ahead and subscribe. As actually about 90% of you who watch these videos don't subscribe. So if you want to see more, please do it. It means the world. Have a great day.